I'm gonna do a commentary for a 25, the 25 SPG Tyrannical that we did earlier this week. Yeah, again, same group as I've been doing it with. Obviously, still Pug, still no comms. We're just we're gaming. So yeah, I'll get right into it. I'll go. Alright, same kind of explanation for the previous key. I literally changed 0 talents from the key we did last, the Ruby. I ran time manipulation. Wow, I cannot speak. I'm running time manipulation instead of Dragon's Breath. There's not many things that can be interrupted by Dragon's Breath in this key, and a lot of things that can, you actually don't want to interrupt, like the domination casts. So I'm not taking Dragon's Breath, I'm taking Time Manipulation. That'll give me some extra AoE dam, which will help my profile, considering I'm basically running the full single target build. As I am running Wintertide, and then Splintering Cold and Slick Ice, especially because it's a Tyrannical week. So let's just get right into it. Oh. Alright. Okay, so I don't like casting Icy Veins on this first pack. The reason for that is because the next pack is a lot more important. Well, not really more important, but it's 4 mobs instead of 3 mobs. So you're obviously going to get more value from more haste and more mobs. And it also will match up with having Icy Veins for the boss. So I typically, just this first pack, I just Rune of Power, and I Rune of Power on pull with Frozen Orb. But other than that, I don't use Icy Veins for this pull. Obviously, I'm not doing great damage. I'm doing 92k for this pull, so not great. But that's because that's all this downtime here running. If you use Icy Veins in that pack, you're going to be having Icy Veins this whole time while you're running. So I would not recommend. I mean, you can do it. It's just I think it's actually not worth it. And now for the Shadowmoon Loyalist, you actually want to be spell stealing. You see. I'll go back so you can actually see the debuff on him. If I can pause it in time. This debuff on him, I believe it's called Sinister Focus, is a 50%, it's either 50 or 100% haste and movement speed buff. So that's something that we can spell steal as mages. It's very beneficial to spell steal, I obviously would. You can tell your group to focus the other guys first so that you can spell steal as much of these as possible, but obviously that's very min-max, so you don't really worry about it, but obviously do try and spell steal that. It does look like it's 100%. You see me go from 18.72% to I spell steal it and I'm at 137, so it's 120, but I don't really think it's that much. I think it's actually only 100%, but and we pull this into the next pack, so this will mean that Shadowmoon Loyalist will be up for a decent amount of time, so I keep targeting him to make sure when the Sinister Focus buff comes up, and I keep spell stealing. Obviously, just focusing the AoE rotation here, making sure your Blizzard and Frozen Orb are always up and off cooldown. Obviously, filling it with Ice Nova in this mass AoE, just due to how much damage Ice Nova will do to the spiders. I've debated trying to ask to see if we can wait to kill that Shadowmoon Loyalist until later on, and maybe get him to snap down to this mob. Because if I can actually spell steal that haste mob a lot, if it's not a mob that's dangerous to tanks or anybody else, that could be really beneficial, at least for this mob. I don't think I'd want to do it for like the boss, obviously, but it might be something to look into. Obviously, again, full AoE rotation here. Interrupt the Shadow Mend and Shadow Bolts if you can. Now, I did end up popping Icy Veins here again. I could have held it, but since all the mobs here were basically at 4 million health when I popped it, I knew I was going to get at least half of my Icy Veins back. And I wasn't too worried about having Icy Veins up exactly when the boss starts. Obviously, you're going to want it to be up when the boss starts, but if you don't, it's not the biggest deal. But I think here, even with this downtime on Icy Veins, I think this is more beneficial than Icy Veinsing that first pack and then having a lot of downtime for everything else. So you see, it's half back, and I'm shifting power and gonna go into the boss. So now on hierarchies, this boss does truck, especially the Whispers. There are a few bad overlaps with Whispers and Dark Eclipse happening at the same time. Those you really need to make sure that you're using defensives for. You see this first one, I'm popping Mirror Image and Barrier. I do like trying to save a rune if I can here for these Dark Communion ads. For here, I just popped my Icy Veins and that dropped me my rune. I do typically swap off the Dark Communion ad a little bit earlier than most people, and that's just because obviously my spells have travel time. We have 2 melee players, or well, obviously 3 melee players hitting that mob, and if I'm using procs on a mob that dies as my procs go, it's kind of worthless. But you can be setting like your icicles or your ice lances into it. That would be okay. So for this right here, I had my defensives rolling for the Dark Eclipse. Well, I had Mirror Image still rolling, and I got a shield from the Priest. And now I know from my timings that Whispers of the Dark Star, or whatever it's called, was coming. So I pre-altered it, knowing when I was going to be at 100% health. And then I'll alter it during the encounter. So you see I'm going to drop pretty low. Drop to 45%, back up to 80. Just with alter. You should have alter for, if not every one, every other one. It looks like the Whispers of Dark time is about every 30 seconds, so you should have it for every other one. So that means you should be able to rotate your defensives, whether that's Barrier Images, or that's G-Invis, or your Ice Blocking. You should have something for every single dark, barrier that's coming up. I wouldn't recommend using your barrier for the Dark Eclipses when a Whisper is coming right after. If you can obviously stack. You can use your barrier early on, because your barrier has a long cooldown, so your barrier will last the entire time. So like here, I used my barrier actually for the Dark Eclipse, and I didn't really have much else, so I used G-Invis here. I kind of wasted my barrier there. It didn't really get as much value as I could have. You shouldn't really be dying from Dark Eclipse until you get to really high keys. I don't think Dark Eclipse will really kill you unless you're not topped, until you probably get to like a 27 key on Tyrannical. Obviously, I have not tested that, so that's, you know, just my thoughts, but obviously here, like I said, I don't have anything rolling for this Dark Eclipse, and I'm perfectly okay with that. The only reason I'm okay with that is because I noticed that the next Whispers wasn't going to happen for another 30 seconds, so I literally have nothing going into this, and it doesn't matter because literally for this next 20 seconds, there's no incoming damage. So again, timers is very useful for fights like these where you know that big damage events are going to be coming. I know that right now that Whisper is going to come in 5 seconds. So I'm obviously going to be using defensives that's coming for that. Obviously, the Dark Whisper will come right after that ad was dead. This one, I was in pretty danger. I didn't have Mirror Image up. I didn't have Barrier up at the time, so I just decided to Ice Block. You'd obviously rather live than die. And we also didn't have any B-reses. The Warrior died, so we had to B-res him. So obviously, always play your life over damage. Again, Dark Communion, I like to try and keep a rune for, but not needed. I also timed this Whispers. This is something that you can easily communicate with your healer. So you obviously saw me basically drop there to like 20% health twice. Our healer healed me from 25 to 30, and then I dropped back down, and I just altered back to full. Alter's a really good mechanic for the Whispers. You can use it, like I said, you can use it every other one.
We shared the pieces of ourselves, it's perfect time.
You saw me use G Invis for this one. I had no defensives rolling. I had Mirror Image going, but I didn't have a barrier up at the start, or I didn't have mirror, Alter Time, so... Now for this pull, this is a pull you don't really want to be interrupting anything on. As long as the tank can keep aggro. Which there are times that these mobs will randomly come at you in melee, like that one just did to me. It randomly came after me and meleeed me. Still not entirely positive why the those mobs sometimes lose aggro. It's sometimes like some people think that it's if you get aggro on the Dominators that the subjected souls will start targeting you, but still not entirely positive on that one. Use Icy Veins here if you can. I ended up getting one of the one of the spell steals here. Any of these corpses that get, you know, when the exhumers do exhume the crypts and these corpses come up, spell steal them. It gives you a shield. The shield is really beneficial for the next boss phase, because when he does the intermission, you'll be taking a lot of damage during intermission. If you have those shields, it basically guarantees that you won't take damage to it, or at least very minimal damage. So it's really good to have. Now for this one, I come and get this mob here, because when you do the next pull, the trash pack right after it, this mob auto pulls for some reason. Not entirely sure why. So I actually get this into the boss. There's two good reasons why this is getting into the boss. I actually have 2 target funnel the entire time. And again, I also get a spell steal a shield, so now you see I have 2 shields. If you're going to be doing that, obviously just make sure you're the one getting an interrupt and getting him into melee. Or at least you're interrupting him and getting him close. But then, obviously, this is very good 2-target cleave, one of Frost's specialties. And now for this, the Soul Steal portion, I kind of did it wrong here, but I'm not sure if I get lucky or not. We'll see. I do a little bit lucky. If you can, when he's casting the Soul Shred, and you have the Possessed Soul that's going to be coming out, if you can stack yourself in melee of the boss, the Possessed Soul actually spawns in like a radius around you. At least testing so far, it seems to do that. So if you can do it in melee, if you can pre-cast a Blizzard and have like a Frozen Orb going or something like that, you can obviously get free damage on both the boss and the mob. And it's also really good because you can be 2-targeting cleave the entire time. Anytime you're targeting the soul, you're obviously going to be hitting the boss with your Icicles and your Ice Lance. So that's obviously very good for Frost Mage. So obviously very good for Frost Mage. And obviously you see here, I had 2 shields rolling beforehand, one from the previous pack and one from the mob on the side. And you see I still have the barrier from one of the mobs. You see that in my buffs too. So like I said, those barriers are pretty big, they're pretty beefy. Obviously you take a decent bit of damage during intermission if you don't have any like procs to kill the mob. So it's just a very good defensive too for you. And as you see, you know, a very good 2-target fight for Frost Mage. I'm doing 96k right now. I am saving my orb here. I'm saving my orb for when the Soul Shred. I see the Soul Shred timer is going to come up in 15 seconds. So he's obviously going to do the Void Vortex, which is going to jump towards somebody. And then he does Soul Shred right after it. So the planar shift. If you have nothing to get out of it, I would blink. So here, I'm going to be low health. Well, not low health, but I'm not going to have a shield. So I'm going to be... a little bit in more danger for this ad. So I'm making it a big deal for me to actually get in melee and have a frozen orb and a blizzard rolling at this time, as well as a root of power. You're gonna see this ad basically just gets absolutely deleted. I cast 3 spells and he's dead. I only took 2 ticks of damage, and you see everyone else is still fighting their ads. And it does a decent chunk of damage. So it's pretty important for you to actually get those either the precast or you have procs rolling in intermission. Because especially as a frost mage, we really have no on-demand burst. So it's pretty important you either have things rolling in or you have defensives rolling so that you can withstand the intermission. Because you saw I was taking for like 15 to 20% of my health every single tick. So if you're not killing that mob relatively quick, you're going to die in intermission. Well, not intermission, in that phase. I do think on higher keys, and obviously in like a coordinated group, I'm debating asking the group to pull extra mobs in every once in a while, so there's always 2 target cleave. That way I can always have, 1, I can always have the shields up, and 2, I can always have 2 target cleave. Because 2 target cleave, 1, it'll help my single target by itself, because I'm having Blizzard up, which will always keep me having more orbs and better orb CDR. And it'll also, if we do pull more mobs in, I'll obviously have the shields as well. Which isn't something that can really be thought of in terms of like damage wise, but it's very good defensively for us. I'm sure it helps a little bit, probably maybe with our warrior as well, but I know for Frost Mage it's very good for us to have constant cleave for that. So here, since the percentage changed in Shadowmoon and the first mob no longer, the first boss, his ads used to actually give percent. Now that they don't, you need a few options. You can get this Exhumer, which you saw our druid actually just died to one of the melees from the mobs, or the void bolts, I'm not sure which, but be very careful of actually interrupting these void bolts, because as you see, a triple bolstered void bolt basically just one-shot somebody. So be very careful of those. Yeah, you said you got meleeed. So on Tyrannical, since we did save, we had Lust for the first boss, and we didn't have it up for the second, we kind of do want 3 Lusts in this key on Tyrannical. You can kind of decide between lusting on Worm Boss or on Ner'zhul himself. The only problem that I have with lusting on Worm Boss is it kind of limits you to having 2 lusts in the key, which it seems if you're like 2-chesting the key, that seems to be the best place to actually do it, because that's just how it lines up with timings. But I think Ner'zhul is a more dangerous boss on Tyrannical. There's not really any dangerous mechanics on the Worm Boss. He's just a long fight. Ner'zhul actually has damage checks, and it has a lot of damage going out from the Omens of Death. So I think it's more important for you, especially on Tyrannical weeks, to have the Lust. So I was communicating here if we should Lust. That's basically going to decide whether a shifting power or not to get Lust back or not. I should be sending my orb and my blizzard here. I'm kind of holding on to both of them, which isn't really good. Again, this is uncapped AoE, so if you can prio your Ice Nova over your Fingers of Frost and Blizzard, but obviously prio your Blizzard and your Frozen Orb over everything else. Now that it's back to two target, I'm back to my normal priority, back to Frostbolt Flurrying with the Shatter procs. Using my Death Snare trinket here. And now again, just 2 target here. Blizzard all the way uptime. Ice Lancing. I probably wouldn't, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have Icy Veins here. I probably should have just popped a Rune, because I know next pack is the Worm. But obviously it's okay just getting Icy Veins on cooldown, but... I wasn't sure when we were actually going to pull the Worms in, or the Bats in, so I did Rune here. I maybe could have saved Rune for when the Bats are going to come, but obviously not. That's a very min-maxy thing for DPS. We did end up pulling the Worms here, or the Bats here anyways. Which I'm very... all the Bats were like stacked together. I like didn't see more than just 2 of them. Which, when seeing 4 nameplates here, kind of surprised me, but... Now, on bolstering, this is still a spot that you want to be focusing the Worm if you can, because if this Worm gets bolstered, he's just going to be a unit of a mob. Now you see here, I am I'm using flurries without the actual shattering, just because it is AoE. If you can here, for this mob, very, very min-maxy thing, you can precast the Blizzard, where you know he's going to land, just so you have damage coming out before he lands. Obviously, you're not going to be casting Blizzard in single target, but if it's, you know, you can't even target him to begin with, you might as well have a Blizzard out. That goes for basically all bosses as well, but...
So surprised, haven't you seen it in my eyes? Oh, I'm running, what am I running from? Time's going by, but where's it?
I got so confused when a healer said explosives. I was like, wait, it's volcanic this week. Why are we talking about explosives? So the only reason I didn't Blizzard this guy is because if you actually pre-Blizzard this guy and your tank's not like instantly getting threat, you can just get meleeed and just instantly die, which is obviously not recommended, so I'd be careful of doing it on some bosses. Now, obviously, as range, you want to be standing in melee here for this boss, especially now that we have 2 melee DPS, it's very important that they actually keep 100% uptime on the boss, so you want to be baiting the corpse breaths as close to the boss as possible. Huh. This is the inhale. This is why you want to make sure that your melee can actually keep 100% uptime on the boss. I'm pretty sure I die here from body slam. Good old bugged mechanic. Alright, I die right here to body slam, by the way, so that's great. Really enjoyed that. That was a fantastic mechanic. I'm super glad that I didn't just pop Icy Veins. But, yeah. Love that. I didn't insta-res here because I saw my res was on top of a Thundering. If I resed and I would have immediately got hit by Thundering, and there's a chance I would have died. But especially on hierarchies, you want to make sure you're actually killing these carrion worms as soon as possible. I got res there, and then immediately got hit by one of the, I think it's like the spits or whatever, and it brought me down to like 20%, so I health potted. But obviously, again, would rather be safe than sorry. Would rather use health pot there and not die than, you know, think I wasn't going to die and not still have health pot. So the corpse breath that he does, or not corpse breath, you see the tank mechanic? The tank actually falls off, and then he does a tank breath. Speeded spit. That's actually a tank, like a frontal. So when he does that, make sure you're not on the tank. That's basically the only form of damage that will ever be coming out in this fight, is that frontal on the tank. If you can, separate yourself from where the tank is. Basically just have the tank on like the left or the right side and everybody else on the other. It just makes it so there's like no healing going on in this fight. The only healing that would need to be done would be from standing in corpse breath. I'm saving rune here because I have Icy Veins here coming up in a second. So again, I wouldn't recommend our tanks standing here in the center like they are. Anyone that's standing in the center. You see our warrior just got hit by the frontal and was taking damage. That's literally the only form of damage that happens in this entire fight. Other than the corpse breath, like I said. And the worms, which is why you need to focus the worms immediately. These are also not great baits for a melee. Our healer was a little far out. If we get an inhale, there's a good chance that our melee actually can't hit him from that range. So luckily the corpse breath got on the one right here. It leaves a clear path for the melee to actually hit him. As you see, this boss has an insane amount of health. He will obviously take a lot of time to kill. He has 53 million health, especially without lust. He's a very easy boss to do. Like I said, there's no real mechanics going on. He's just basically a target dummy. Obviously, what I'm doing here is I'm just pre-casting my Blizzard, hoping that he's going to spawn. Kind of just a 50-50. All of our players just got hit by a volcanic. You need to be careful, especially on volcanic weeks. If you get hit by a volcanic in this while inhale's going off, you can easily just get sucked off the edge. As literally everybody but me and the healer got hit by volcanic. Now again, just standing in melee for the baits. On this, I would prio using your interrupts on the corpse spiders. Well, obviously prio, those are the only ones that really matter because it says something to the whole group. The bats only do a plague spit, which only goes on one target. And the spiders can't actually get CC'd. They can only get interrupted, whereas the bats can get CC'd. So blast wave, dragon's breath, all that works on the bats themselves, but it doesn't work on the spiders. So obviously try and save your kicks for the spiders if possible. In our group, we have a paladin, so we're fine for kicks, and it's basically just like as long as one other person is focusing one of the other spiders, the paladin can get every kick on one of the spiders, and then you just basically can get kicks on the others or AoE CCs on the bats. Now I am saving my Icy Veins here and my Frozen Orb because this next 2-pack is pretty dangerous. The 2 elementals, it's just a dangerous pack in general. There's a lot of damage going out. Luckily, as a ranged, not necessarily only as a ranged, because there are some spots that melees can do it. There's a very good line of sight spot that you can sit in. That basically makes it so you don't take damage from any of the void pulses, and it's literally just a step away from you hitting the targets. Alright, so you see a void pulse going out. I just got hit by the first one. Our defense is rolling, so I didn't really care. And now from here on out, I'm going to take the LOS spot. So you see I just LOS in this little corner by this pillar. You just LOS here, and you won't take any damage from any of the void pulses. There's a few other spots. There's one opposite. There's one over here. There's one right here. There's one on the opposite side of this pillar. Same thing as like this side over here. You can also pull these mobs back and go at the staircase. It's very min-maxy. Obviously, you'll lose some DPS, but you'll obviously not have to deal with a lot of healing. And then during Void Eruptions, if you are using the bait, I would highly recommend getting out of the corner because Void Eruptions will spawn on where you're standing. So you can bait the Void Eruption spots outside of the bait spot, outside of the LOS spot. So you saw I was baiting all of them outside, and so now I have a free spot to go back into for the Void Pulses. I did get hit by an eruption there, so I ended up using an offensive here. But I'm not too worried about my health because I am using the LOS spot, but... Like I said, I only got hit. I got hit by the first void pulse, and then I got hit by the one void eruption. I took that one because there's only one. It's really only dangerous when there's two of the mobs at once. The healer can definitely just heal through one of them doing a void pulses, as long as you don't get hit by void eruptions as well. But now this last portion is really important, especially as the only range. The only range, you're going to be the only person getting the Omens of Death baited on you. So it's very important for you to know when the Omen of Death will be coming out, when to bait it, how to bait it, and what you can do to mitigate the damage from it. So as a mage, we kind of have a lot of options. Alter Time is very good for either mitigating the damage or changing positions. We have Blink that can immediately get us out of it. We have G-Invis, we have Mirror, we have Barrier. We have a lot of defensives that we can use at our disposal. The main thing is positioning wise. So the main thing is you want to be basically as far away as possible as you can be, both from the group and from like the center of the platform, because obviously when the intermission happens, you want to make sure that you are you're not anywhere near where the wall may be, and you also want to make sure the Omens of Death are always in a good spot so that your group can always have at least 1 or 2 mobs that you can mark to focus. It is a little weird sometimes. Ner'zhul does 1 Omen of Death, sometimes he does 2 in the first phase. I'm still not really sure how, like, where and why he sometimes does 1, sometimes he does 2. I'm normally used to him just only doing 1, which is really good because after the first one you can just move and start DPSing the Ritual of Bones. I kind of wasn't expecting that second one. For these mobs, there's a way you can get Blizzarding 3 of the mobs. You get 2 of the Bones and Ner'zhul. I would really only recommend trying to go for 2 of them. It's not really worth going for 3. You only get like 2 ticks of 3 and that's it. If you obviously just go for 2 mobs at once, you'll almost always get uptime because the walls will be moving, and your Zul's always going to be by the mob themselves because your tank will obviously be hitting the wall as well. And now in terms of Omen of Death will always come out during the intermission, not until it's basically not until the wall reaches the absolute end. So you want to be baiting basically in this. You wanted your tank to pull all the way with the mob that you kill, and you want to be standing in the same spot that the end of the wall would be. So you see I'm standing here in the corner. I'm waiting for Omen of Death, and then I immediately get out. Very good. I go back towards this area, and now this is where positioning and knowing when the next Omen of Death is coming out is important. So I see the next one coming out here. I'm moving. It's also really important to actually keep good Rune of Power uptime. That's what's going to make a lot of our damage good, is keeping Rune of Power uptime. So I see the next one coming out here. And there's a Ritual of Bones. You can try and save a Rune of Power for the Ritual of Bones if needed. Like I said, there is no Omen of Death that's going to be coming out during intermission. So you can obviously place Rune and not worry about it at all. Obviously, you still need to worry about Malevolence. You can bait Malevolence. Malevolence is always baited on a player location. So if you can, when you're attacking the wall, try and be all baited to like one side or the other. Because that way, when it happens, you can just obviously just move the other side. Again, same thing as always. I waited until basically the very last moment when Omen of Death comes out, and I just blink out. Obviously, any class that has some sort of movement ability, I would highly recommend doing that. It's very good because this also leaves... You see how far away from the center of the platform this is? This is going to do no damage to basically anybody, and you should always have a lot of room to... for the next Ritual of Bones, if it ends up being near it. Now, this is something that I do here, that I'll kind of go through why I do this. Normally, I only do this when I have a Rune of Power up, but it's also kind of good, one, to bait Omens of Death near each other, or as close to them as possible as you can. It's good for intermission because it basically clears a lot more of the room and makes it so you don't really take damage in intermission from the Omens of Death. I'll kind of walk through what I'm doing here. So I know the next Omen's coming up in 5 seconds, so what I'm going to do, even though I don't have a rune, is I'm going to alter time in my safe spot. And I'm gonna blink over to the Omen of Death spot, and I know immediately when it's gonna land, and I just alter back. And now those 2 Omens of Death are basically just right next to each other. And now anywhere that the Ritual of Bones actually spawns, other than basically this line, anywhere from this line, or just like if the mob spawns here, anywhere else in the whole entire arena is basically fine for us to focus the ad. So literally this entire right side of the room, we're taking no damage from Omen of Death. Or very minimal damage. You see I'm still getting tickled a little bit, but it's very minimal. Unfortunately, this fight kind of sucks for Frost Mage in terms of like our actual damage. I run Ice Flows just because I like having the movement option, especially as the only ranged person. Unfortunately, a lot of our time, is just going to be running and baiting, which isn't great. It kind of sucks. Obviously, I'm going to be losing some uptime from Icy Veins, but I kind of just wanted to get it on cooldown. So obviously, I'm losing all of the uptime from that rune there. You saw I got greedy for a cast, and I literally got chunked from... I got chunked from 100 with, I think, a barrier up to 27% HP. So obviously that the Omen of Death hurts. Yeah, I got chunked from 96 to 27 from one take of the Omen. And now you obviously don't have altar time for every single one of the fates, but you should have it for every set of the omens. So I should have the altar time up for the next set. I decided not to use it. Oh, I did use it here. I baited it towards it and went back. You can not use it if you really don't want. It's kind of just min-maxy placing at the same time at the same place. Again, now you saw all of them are over on one platform. You see now that this entire side of the platform, we can basically choose the Ritual of Bones that we want to go for. So that's very useful. Obviously, I'm casting my Blizzard. I know that the boss is going to come here soon. Having 2 targets on Blizzard will give me more uptime on Orb. Obviously, it does damage to both the boss and the Ritual of Bones at the same time. I typically don't like using my Ice Flows during this phase because during when it's not intermission, I obviously have a lot of movement that I need to deal with because I'm the only ranged, obviously baiting still. So I typically like saving my Icy Flows so when Omen of Death comes out, I can cast for the first Omen of Death instead of blinking. Yeah, like this right here. I can cast while moving still. I alter time, blink into the corner again, place the Omen of Death, alter back. You can also time it pretty well with the... You can see when the Omen of Death is actually going to pulse damage. So when you see when it pulses damage and you know one's going to come out, you can wait for the pulse and then immediately just alter back. Again, casting Blizzard here. I know I'm obviously always getting 2 target cleave here now for Blizzard. Obviously getting the CDR for Orb. In worst case scenario, you can use Ice Block for those Malevolences if you get a really bad one. Sometimes right here, Malevolence will be baited on you while you're baiting for the next Omen of Death. If this is baited on you, this is basically like you need an Ice Block. So this is a time where you actually will need an Ice Block, and either an Ice Block or you're gonna need to blink and like run out. But the visuals are very risky for the intermission for the Ritual of Bones. So if there is one baited at you at this phase, just try and have an Ice Block save for it. I love my life so much. Now I'm doing the same thing again. It's important again when you need the Rune of Power. So I runed. Having Rune uptime is so important. That this is the one time where it's really important to do the Omen of Death thing. Is because now I'm back in Rune of Power. Obviously the boss is dead at this point, so we can just focus boss. But that's a time when you really want to be using the Alta Time tech. I wouldn't really do it for the second or third Omen because that means another Omen's going to be coming out within the next few seconds. I would try, for the first or second Omen, I mean. I would always use it for that second to third Omen of Death when you already have 2 out and you're spawning the third one. Because after that third one, you get no more Omens of Death and you're going into an intermission. That's when you can actually keep Rune up time and actually do the most damage there. So that's when I would recommend doing the Altar Time thing. But yeah, that does the commentary for the 25 Shadowmoon that we did this week. Tyrannical, Bowstring, Volcanic. Yeah. Thank you all for tuning in.